What kind of values are you passing down to the next generation? What does a hero mean to you? To me, it's ordinary people doing extraordinary things. It's time for Hero Salute Stories. How'd you get the nickname Cowboy, Bill?
They put it on me in Vietnam. I worked for a guy named Bobby Hadaway, who was over battalion logistics. I was transferred for whatever reason from Bravo Company, which I'd been in for about 7 years, infantry, to headquarters company with an old first sergeant who needed help. He took me with him. So I wound up working under Bobby Hadaway in Vietnam, who was logistics. I did the radios all for Bobby back to battalion headquarters.
Well, from what I understand, X-ray and this particular offense, it was the first time they'd ever used B-52s.
Yes. All right, so they softened at 10 o'clock, they softened the place up with B-52s, and you could see them, and you could hear them. And so we knew what they were doing. We knew what they were doing. But on Monday is when the mess really started flying, and it got so thick that Moore had just run out of options. They had us outnumbered, 1,600. We finally got some of our people in. Later on, we had two brave helicopter pilots, Too Tall Ed Freeman and Bruce Crandall would go in, they would take ammo in, they would take water in, they would take bandages in, they took sea rations in, and they would bring wounded out under fire. And those two men would later, after we came back to the States, be awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. Ed Freeman now is resting in Boise. So that next day, I lost a squad leader that I'd been with for 4 years. He taught me everything. Knew his wife. He had a little girl right before we left Fort Benning that he just loved. That's all he talked about, his little baby girl. And then we were gone. It was 400 of us and 16 of them, 1,600. 2 regiments, 2 complete North Vietnamese regiments. And they just couldn't handle the firepower. We lost so many good men. I guess the one that I think, if I can tell you about one, my medic, Spec 5, Calvin Bognite from Washington, D.C. Calvin was a conscientious objector. No weapon, but he had a medic's bag, and he tried to patch up everybody that he possibly could. Willie Mitchell, same way, conscientious objector from Pennsylvania, and they tried to patch everybody they could. But it cost both of them their lives. Anybody that says they were ever in combat without fear lied. So and if you hear, that wasn't the first time, you can hear if a bullet goes through a real tight CP tent, it pops. It's coming pretty fast, and you can hear the pop. That's close to home.
How do you want to be remembered?
As just one of these guys. I was nothing special. I just had the uniform. I knew you guys, and one day we'll be together again.
You're watching Family Heritage Stories with me and my grandpa. We'll be right back.
Sometimes when you return from a deployment, you bring back more than you can carry on your own. As you transition from the front lines to the home front, help can be a click away. Visit steptohealing.org for your free anonymous online screening.
There's something special about the bond between a grandparent and a grandchild. How would you answer this question? Tell me about your grandma and grandpa. This is Doug Jessup. One of my favorite questions to ask people all around the world is, tell me a story about your grandma or grandpa. Well, today I'm going to try to explain why I asked that question. When I was 12 years old, I got a cassette recorder for Christmas. I liked to interview people even back then. My favorite person to interview was my gramps. Now, he was a pretty cool guy. His name was George Emo Youngquist. He told me stories that my mother didn't even know. Gramps died when I was 19 years old. The last words that my grandfather said on this earth were, "Please remember me." This is his story. Gramps, George Emo Youngquist, was a first-generation American. His parents were Frederick and Ida. They immigrated in 1903. George was born that same year at a place called Oak Park, Illinois, which is basically just outside of Chicago. When George was 8 years old, his mother died of a birth appendix because they couldn't afford a doctor. 4 years later, Frederick, his father, visa expired, and he had to return to his home country. Frederick wanted his little boy, his only child, to be able to have the advantages of living right here in the United States, even though he knew he would never see his child again. They communicated with letters and such, but never saw him again. So here's my Gramps. He's 12 years old, and he's put on a train by himself from Chicago, Illinois to Pasadena, California. He's going to go live with his mother's eldest sister. She's a 45-year-old single woman, and she was known as Auntie Augusta. Auntie Augusta had never had any children, raised him as her own. George had a good childhood living with Auntie. You know, he helped in the garden, he had a newspaper route as a kid. The fun thing was, and this is one of those things that my mother didn't know, he was a sharp dresser, and he was actually a chauffeur during the Depression. He got to drive around those Hollywood types. In the mid-1930s, George met a beautiful young lady. Now, I'm ever so slightly biased, but okay. She was a beautiful nursing student, and she was from Iowa, and they met at a dance at the Pasadena Civic Auditorium. Her name was Florence Holm. Now, she was quite a looker, and she had lots of suitors, but then she got sick. She had polio. And you know what? All the suitors disappeared, except for one, George. They got married in 1936. George was a furniture maker, owned an upholstery shop in Pasadena, and Florence was a pediatric emergency room nurse. They were blessed with two cute little girls, the oldest of which is my mom. Sadly, Florence died at the age of 44 of breast cancer. My mom was 14 years old. So here's George. He had lost his mom. Was raised by a single dad for a number of years. Then his dad had to go back to the old country. Then he's raised by a single mom, his auntie. And now he's a single dad of two young girls. He never remarried. I was born 6 years later. Gramps was the kindest, most gentle man I ever met. We would rub noses. He'd call them Eskimo kisses. I have fond memories of him rubbing his 5 o'clock shadow on me. Man, I knew I was loved. Gramps always had a camera in his hand. The old movies you see at the beginning of every episode of Family Heritage Stories, well, those are actually his old 8mm movies. I follow in his footsteps, telling stories with pictures. When Gramps passed away, I inherited his cufflinks. Right here, see that? This custom hat, it's called the George. Those are his cufflinks. Every time I wear this hat, I remember my Gramps. So Gramps, when you said, please remember me, you are the reason. You are the reason for my passion to help people tell their stories. Because to me, if stories are not passed down from generation to generation, they're lost. And those people are forgotten. Gramps, you will never be forgotten. Part of Family Heritage Stories is passing along good stories. But you know what? It's also passing along those hard stories, those things when you had to struggle. Hi guys, this is Doug Jessup with another episode of the Caring Stories. Now, I'm excited about this one. I have got some pretty cool people. We've got Dr. Rich Greenberg and his wife, Carrie Greenberg. So, Carrie, you're a stay-at-home mom. You're married to a pediatrician, so you guys are kind of the ultimate power couple. And you've now started this new conference with pediatric feeding. I got to hear more.
Well, our daughter, Marla, was an infant and had a feeding tube and several medical issues. And it was really, it was a hard thing to have a child who did not eat. And so we struggled looking for ways to get her the therapies that she needed. We kind of hit a wall with looking for what was here locally. It felt like we exhausted those resources with our therapists. And so we started going to places like California and Arizona, looking for what would help Marla. And it took us about 7.5 years to get her eating with intensive feeding therapies. And in our struggle, because it is such a hard thing to be a mom who feels like you're failing, not being able to feed your child. And so in our struggle, I realized too that other parents were struggling with this, and that the therapists needed more resources and connections. And so the idea of putting the Pediatric Feeding Symposium was born out of the necessity of needing something local that would provide people with connection and resources and knowledge to have a way to help parents find the support that they need.
So, Dr. Greenberg, I mean, you are a pediatrician that's seen all kinds of things, but you're also a parent, okay? And, you know, I understand, I mean, where you go, okay, you feel helpless. And there's something that, you know, you're trying to figure out. And this symposium thing, to me, is doing the ultimate, which is giving parents hope. But for the people out there watching, how prevalent are these feeding disorders, and how do you recognize them? I mean, what's kind of the things to watch out for?
Yeah. Pediatric feeding disorders are rather common. They occur in about 3% of children under 5, so that's about 20 times more common than something like Down syndrome. Wow. Even though we've heard about many things like Down syndrome, very few people know about pediatric feeding disorders. It's very different than an eating disorder such as anorexia. In a feeding disorder, a child is unable or unwilling to eat orally. These happen for a variety of reasons. They're often multifactorial. There are medical reasons and developmental reasons, things such as cleft palate, Down syndrome can be associated, autism, sometimes psychological and other traumatic factors are involved. The implications lead to obviously nutritional deficiencies, and many of these kids often require tube feeding to sustain them nutritionally. In order to treat these kids, you need a specialized team, pediatrician, occupational therapist, speech and feeding therapist, psychologist, dietitian, so it takes a whole community to take care of these kids. It's crucial to be able to recognize it quickly and treat it, because if it's not diagnosed quickly and treated, it can lead to long-term negative impacts on their physical and mental health, therefore emphasizing the importance of quick recognition, diagnosis, and treatment of these children.
You guys are doing something really special. And,
She's a stay-at-home mom who puts on a medical conference. I told her 8 years ago, a person doesn't put on a conference. A hospital puts on a conference. A team of 4 to 6 people, as their part or full-time job, put on a conference. One woman just put her 6th conference on, with some help from me, with some part-time help, very part-time help from a few other people. It's amazing, it's crazy, it's super stressful. It shouldn't be done. I keep telling her to stop, and she keeps doing it.
Well, now, Carrie, I'm going to make you blush, but the reality is, you know, you're a stay-at-home mom, and like your husband, the doctor, said here, I mean, this is not something that normal people do. I mean, but I understand it because some of the most powerful people that I've met are super moms and super dads because they're doing something for their kids. And if you can just help one person not have to go through the stuff you've gone through, it's worth it.
Yeah.
So I totally understand your why. But what are you trying to accomplish with this?
The main thing I'm trying to accomplish with the Pediatric Feeding Symposium is connection. So many parents feel alone in this journey, and so the way that I decided to bring help and hope to these families is through a conference, because we can bring education and collaboration and research all to one place, and it accomplishes our goals through putting on a pediatric feeding conference. And with the symposium, we try to hit each year the 4 main domains of pediatric feeding disorders, which is medical, psychological, nutrition, and feeding skills. And so we will bring experts in from across the nation as well as from local, and everybody just collaborates, and we learn from these people, and it's a beautiful thing to see the connections that happen during our breaks and before and after the conference. And it provides these parents who also get to come an opportunity for the extra knowledge and expertise and connections that they make with our exhibitors and our providers that are there.
Well, the thing I love about this, and there's a phrase that's called knowledge is power. And you've got the ultimate power couple here. Here's a super mom and the dad that has got all this knowledge and these skills and says, okay, how can we combine this and make 1 + 1 = 3? But you guys are going 1 + 1 = 3 billion. So I love what you're doing. But the other thing that I like is the fact that you're giving a forum not just for parents, but also for the medical field, because you brought up the team approach. To be able to have this team. So people out there are watching this right now going, okay, maybe I am dealing with this, or I know someone else that is dealing with this, or I have a patient that's dealing with this. How do they find out more about your Pediatric Feeding Symposium?
Well, our Pediatric Feeding Symposium is a yearly conference each September, and we have a hub of information at our website, pedfeed.org, and on there people can find all kinds of information or some resources, but the main thing you will find on there is the information about the conference and any socials that we will put on that help with this community connection. And you can also follow us on our social medias, Pediatric Feeding Community.
So you're putting a heck of a lot of work into this. You're providing all these speakers. You've got, let's get real, everybody has got costs and everything. How can people and maybe companies out there help with this pediatric feeding symposium?
We're able to run the symposium by wonderful sponsors and donors who help provide venues or meals, which is our time to connect with our exhibitors. Sponsors and exhibitors are a big part of our conference and making that community. And they also get the added benefits of a very active and involved and interested community who is looking for resources for their children and for the children that they help.
Well, talking about engaged people, having been at some of these kind of events, if you're a potential exhibitor, I guarantee these are the people you want to be in front of. So thank you so much for what you're doing, because, I think sometimes, and yeah, I'm going to get a little schmaltzy on you, but, sometimes I don't think you guys understand what you're doing when you're doing it. And so you look back and you say, okay, here are all these people. And having had a child that has had some issues, the two big things you want to know is, what in the world am I dealing with? Mm-hmm. And number two, I feel so alone. Yeah. What you're doing, quite bluntly, is giving people hope. So thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
With another episode of The Caring Stories with Carrie and Dr. Rich Greenberg, I'm Doug Jessup. Ever wondered how an object becomes important enough to pass down to the next generation? I have. This Treasures Remembered could be about this hat, or it could be about this pocket watch, but it's actually about this ring. Let me go back in time a bit. Many years ago, I went to college at Utah State University. There I met a woman with the most beautiful eyes. I somehow convinced her to be my wife. Years went by. We had great kids and now 5 incredible grandkids. Recently, my wife and I took a fun cruise to celebrate a big anniversary. We're both history buffs, and we found ourselves treasure hunting in Key West, Florida to find something special. Lo and behold, we found a bracelet with a Spanish half-real coin from the late 1600s. At the same time, we also found this ring with a coin that appears to have been cut down to make change. My ring's a little younger, from the mid-1700s. My wife's a tad older than me, so it seemed to fit. Oh, by the way, this pocket watch is a treasure from my treasure. She gave it to me as a wedding present. I love you, Camille. Why did the chicken cross the plains? Well, because somebody put it in a wagon westward in the 1850s. This Treasured Remembered is a porcelain chicken dish. The story goes that its original owner, Elna Olsdatter Hansen, a Swedish immigrant, purchased the dish in the eastern United States. It was deemed special enough that it was packed in Captain Brown's wagon train from Iowa, bound for Salt Lake City, and ended up in Mount Pleasant, Utah. The dish was then passed on to her daughter, Christina Peterson. Christina passed it on to her daughter, Hannah Tucker. The chicken then went to Hannah's son and daughter-in-law, Valton and Lorna Tucker. The chicken journeyed next to their daughter, Dorothy MacArthur, who in turn passed it down to her daughter, Camille Jessup. Quite the journey for that chicken. Everyone has a story. Objects with stories are treasures remembered. Most everyone in the United States descends from someone that immigrated here. What would you bring to remember your home country, knowing that you would probably never see your home country again? Ida Josephine Youngquist arrived in the United States in 1902. She brought with her this silver mesh coin purse. Inside were these special coins, including this Swedish krona from 1731 to remind her of home. Objects with stories are treasures remembered.
You're watching Family Heritage Stories with me and my grandpa. We'll be right back.
Today, I've got Jerry Schneider with me. So, Jerry, where the heck are we today?
We are in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
What's the thing that you like best about cruising?
I don't have to do any work.
I like that. I like that a lot. True confession, I messed up the audio in one of my interviews, but thank goodness my wife Camille was here to do a little audio check.
Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. How many pickled peppers did Peter Piper pick?
See, that now might go on the show.
Wait, what?
I grew up near the beach, and so I remember seeing jellyfish, okay? When you get stung by them, not a good feeling, okay? But when you were aboard the Celebrity, they had glass blowing, so what the heck? I made this jellyfish, okay? And it doesn't sting. Unless you drop it on your foot, but hey. Any idea what we should go do at Cabo?
You need to take a tour boat that brings you out to the, I think it's called the Arches.
Okay.
It's a entry of the harbor.
Okay.
And it's a well-known tourist destination.
Gotcha.
The tour guide will tell you all about it and the couple different beaches that are in the area and which ones not to go on.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. So
because
now,
of one side is on the Pacific side, and
Yeah.
it's full of rip currents. So they,
oh, okay.
one side of the beach they call the honeymoon beach,
Yes.
and the other side where the rip currents are, they call that the divorce beach.
Okay. I think you've got all kinds of stories about that one. You've heard of Pacific Coast Highway in the U.S., but did you know that Highway number 1 actually starts in Cabo San Lucas, right there at kilometer 0?
This is kilometer 0 of that highway.
Hint, they tell you you really don't want to do it. Our tour guide gave us a little insight, okay? So, you know there's a lot of people that go down to Mexico to get pharmaceuticals, okay? Well, come to find out, they don't have the same rules, and so, yeah, you could get just about anything. There's lots of free tequila tasting in Cabo San Lucas, but just be careful, you might end up looking like this lady. Now, you've probably heard of Cabo San Lucas, but have you heard of San Jose del Cabo? Cabo San Lucas is more the party city. Well, San Jose del Cabo, it's more like the responsible uncle. With another entry in Jessup's Journeys, people, places, and things you might not know about, I'm Doug Jessup. How do you want to be remembered?